Hello and welcome to the program. I am Suren. How to live wisely? That's a good question. How to live without judgment and empty assumptions. How to live lovingly, accepting all as they are. How to live in peace and in serenity. How to live in harmony. Judgment in law is the decision of a court. The judgment may be the conclusion based upon evidence developed in a trial. The judgment made in actuality is given by a court when the defendant does not defend his or her case, or cannot. When defendant admits the claim or the charge, the court hands down a confessed judgment. Then such a judgment becomes the law governing the particular cases. Now, judgment involves understanding and acknowledging how to, or considering more ideas, even may be considered, or how they may be altered. People tend to judge the ideas as being something, and that they are not something else. So logic rules. Understanding that a circle is round and a square is not. That requires some form of judgment. Primarily, we all observe an object called a circle or a square, spherical or cubic. Then we consider the idea of a word round and not the squareness. We think of the qualities that make a thing a circle or a square, and all the qualities that make a thing a circle or a square. Correct? Philosophers of old call this process abstracting. After all, we have an idea of what a circle or square is. We cannot judge whether these ideas agree or disagree with each other. We can only realize the idea of roundness and circle or square. Here we have made a judgment that a circle is round and the square is not. The statement, circles are round, cannot be contradicted. Philosophers call such statements as necessary judgments. However, the reality of a statement, for instance, food satisfies hunger, depends on other facts. A person eating the food could be ill or unable to digest it. Philosophers use the term contingent judgment for a judgment that can be contradicted. Now, one other kind of judgment is called belief. Belief is normally based on what experienced persons tell us, or on events that are and were not easily proven. Opinions, assumptions, and doubts are similar to beliefs. An opinion is really a weak form of belief. So is also an assumption. When we have an opinion or an assumption about something, we usually wait for more facts before making a firm judgment. When we are in doubt, we normally delay making a final judgment or a decision because the facts or authorities may contradict one another. Making a good judgment requires the ability, experience, wisdom, and training. Poor judgments usually result from faulty reasoning, legal facts, or prejudices, says Frank Kobler. Now, let us consider assumptions. What does a psychologist think of assumption? Question mark. An assumption is a thing accepted as true or is certain to happen, an action of taking on power in settlements. It can also be considered as arrogance or presumption. In Latin, it is assumere. In ancient French, it is assumption. In English language, it is assume. Reality cannot be easily defined by the researcher all alone. It is therefore necessary to capture the meaning of it. The meaning, experiences, and perceptions of those others participating in this study. Now, assumption can be classified as the basis to an argument. There are also very classic assumptions that can hurt relationships. A. Believing you are being cheated, for instance. B. Believing people are always trying to get money out of you. C. Believing you are being not appreciated. Basically, an assumption is something you believe in or which you don't have proof of. The inherent problem with any kind of assumptions is its fulfillment of emotional needs, and that inevitably leads to an emotional response. When one assumes to know a piece of information, one reacts accordingly. Negative assumptions usually derive from our own fears. They don't just come out of nowhere. What leads to toxicity is when people take assumptions and run with them. When people have a deep emotional need, they become so attached to these needs that they actively prefer their assumptions as opposed to reality when in this emotional space. They would rather believe their own guesses or rather believe their own thoughts than the actual reality is, because it validates the emotions that they really want to be experiencing. That's true. When angry, people tend to look for information that will validate and perpetuate their own anger rather than resolve the issue. Probably it is too shaming and embarrassing to learn that their anger, rather than resolve the issue, is based on something not to be used in reality. The more assumptions people make and believe, the better chance this will get in the way of all relationships, not just romantic ones, but with family, friends, even one's own self as well. These types of assumptions can cascade into a snowball of unrealities, and soon it becomes unclear what we have manifested in our own selves and what has actually happened in reality. How can one undo such assumptions? 1. Be skeptical of second-hand information. Take it with a grain of salt and don't buy into it unless you have proof. It is easy to latch onto something we want to hear, and this is exactly the danger. That's the truth. 2. Know when you are assuming. If you did not see or hear it yourself, you are assuming. This includes partially assuming also. If you see something, it still may not tell the whole story or the absolute truth. Be therefore careful of taking a scene and or writing a script of your own or talking about. Assumptions truly damage the capacity to relate to others. Then they can end up with low self-esteem and depression. By assumptions about others and their wants, thinking, feelings, and needs, we all attempt doing people's thinking for them. Not only is it diminishing the person's autonomy and sovereignty, it's damaging the person more. People frequently cause themselves pain by making assumptions about others, their feelings, emotions, and actions. If these assumptions are true or not, known or unknown, and they are often very negative, we then place ourselves in a very negative mindset by assuming the worst. It is therefore better never to assume anything. Why should one avoid assuming, would you say? Ask, but don't assume. Respond, but avoid reacting. Reconsider and think about it. Communicate and do it regularly. Decide to see positive intentions. Shift from expectation to shared understanding. That is the best action. An assumption is an unexamined belief, what we think without realizing. We think it as we think. Are you a critical thinker? However, attentive to assumptions, one might be, for they are often incorrect or misguided. Think about it. Making assumptions means we believe things or people are a certain way with little or no evidence to show that we are actually correct. What we see when we look at other people not only depends on what we look at, but where we are looking from. Just think about it. All perspective impacts what we think is happening with other people. Are you guilty making too many assumptions, do you think? When children do things, they expect their parents to like them. Adolescents have expectations too. However, adults continually assume, forgetting that guessing is based on a lack of evidence. Some even consider assumptions as if they are a fortune-telling. Many patients were discovered to be struggling with depression and were found to be operating on false assumptions. In other words, having distorted thinking, usually by helping those patients help themselves change their thinking towards a good relief. People jump to conclusions which may sometimes be catastrophic and very negative. We need to teach them how to avoid making assumptions. If you are one of them who is preoccupied mentally, recounting what was said or done verbally or non-verbally, and likely to make assumptions, you are engaged probably in a mental chess game. That's how it looks. The problem with this is that the memories can be infused with a biased lens. Probably so by our own history. Distractions, which may pollute our memories. So, it is better not to waste all the most valued possession of our mental energies There are always ways to avoid making assumptions. Let me list them. 1. Assess the evidence. Remind yourself that nothing happens until it does. Over-personalization of behaviors is a risk and can truly destroy relationships. 2. Trust your ability to solve problems. Love is stronger than death. Do not let this ability create anxiety, wasting your mental energies. However, reinforcing your ability to solving problems builds self-confidence. 3. Develop a strategy of restriction. Do not overthink situations by using distraction teachings or techniques. Listen to music if you like. Watch television. Have a bath. Exercise. Have a walk. You can. And please don't hurt yourselves. You will experience patience, tolerance, building stronger feelings of self-love and self-confidence. I think enough is said about assumptions. Thank you for watching, and we shall meet you again here by the next episode. Until then, keep smiling and be happy. Thank you.